everyone, and welcome to the Rumi Forum luncheon series. Today we have as our special guest Dr. Karina Korostelina, who is an associate professor at the Institute of Conflict Analysis and Resolution, George Mason University, and a fellow of the European Research Centre of Migration and Ethnic Relations. She's leading experts on identity-based conflicts, ethnic conflicts, the relationships between Muslim and non-Muslim populations, conflict resolution and peace building. Her recent interests include the study of civilization devastation, the process of politicalization of history and role of history education in conflict and post-conflict societies. She has been a Fulbright New Century Scholar, has participated in the Regional Scholar Exchange Program administered by the Kennan Institute, Woodrow Wilson Center, Washington DC, and in the CRC Nationalism session at the Curriculum Resource Center of the Central European University. And today Karina will be speaking on the topic Fethullah Gulen's contribution to the field of conflict analysis and resolution. And I welcome her today to the Rumi Forum. Thank you very much, Karina.
Thank you, and thank you everyone to coming today. It's probably one of the best first days of spring, so I really appreciate that you trade this wonderful weather for sitting here. And when we just spoke, I was asked why I become interested in Gulen movement. And I can tell I'm really Western trained psychologist, social psychologist, and I have 2 PhDs, one in general psychology, one in social psychology, and I study social identity mostly. And then I was thinking on some approaches to conflict resolution from point of view of non-Western cultures, because I'm originally from Crimea, very neighboring place to Turkey, and I did a lot of work with Crimean Tatars in Crimea. I was thinking that I was looking for some interesting theories which can contribute and change somehow Western approaches to conflict resolution, and Gulen came across because it was very articulate, very interesting. Even he is not a social scientist, but his ideas were very strongly resonate, and I will show you today with what we study in conflict resolution. And that's how I become involved. I participated in several conferences, already published several papers on Gulen and conflict resolution. And today I will speak generally about how we can see this fusion between conflict resolution theories developed in Western social sciences and how Gulen can contribute to our deep understanding of such processes. And first of all, Gulen speaks very strongly about importance of peace and conflict resolution. He's not using conflict resolution notion, but he's speaking about importance of positive perceptions between Muslim and non-Muslim population. He told in 2004 in one of his articles, today more than anything else, our society is in need of tolerance. And this is the idea which going through all his works, all his ideas. But he also speaks, and for us it's important because conflict resolution always starts with conflict analysis, and he speaks a lot about what are the problems, what are impediments for peace, what type of problems we can identify in relations between Muslim and non-Muslim population. And first of all, he's speaking about increasing negativity in perceptions of others. For example, he was telling many Muslims, even educated and conscious ones, believe that West seeks to undermine Islam with every more subtle and sophisticated methods. And he's speaking a lot that there are a lot of prejudices and biases from Muslim side. But he also speaks very strongly about negative perceptions of Muslims. For example, he's telling this negative image has been fed to the world, and now we must once more communicate the essential facet of Islam. So he's telling there are a lot of misunderstandings, there are a lot of negative perceptions which come, of course, historically, which come, of course, with mass media, which is feeding these negative perceptions a lot. And it's also, he's speaking about the scope of this problem. It's not just relations between Muslim and non-Muslim, it's the whole scope, the increasing framework of negativity between different communities. Even if we see statistics, we can see that the amount of conflicts, especially violent conflict, decreased after the fall of Soviet Union, because this Cold War system was destroyed, and amount of conflicts really went down. But in the same way, we see that civilian devastation, one of the topics which I study strongly, and by the way, if you're interested in civilian devastation, I mean why civilians are killed in conflicts, next week I will have a presentation. If somebody needs, I will give more information on my new book with my colleague on why they die, on civilian devastation. We explore different models, how civilians become a target. And we know that they become increasingly target. If during World War I, civilians, only 10% of civilians were killed, now 90% of civilians are killed. Now it's more safe to be in the military than to be in civilian. So there is increasingly, as Gulen tells, communities and diverse groups within communities live with apparently endless anger, hatred, and devastation. And this is important. This is really context of relations between Muslim and non-Muslim population also. Next one in Gulen writings is issue that people neglect the positive sides of human relations, humanity and love. He is writing, it seems that we have forgotten how to act like human beings. We constantly produce evil in our thoughts. And he has very strong ideas about how people become more and more far from the God, far from the ideas of love which really should penetrate all our life. And it's also lead to misperceptions and the most important, attribution of aggressive intentions, because then we do not like others, then we do not trust others. The next in our behaviors attribute to them some negative intentions. And it was studied a lot in social sciences, explaining the whole process of projection, attribution. But I was really glad to find it's also in writing of Gulen, how he, from his view, telling that this absence of love, this hatred in heart of people, really lead to these misperceptions and attribution of negative things to others. Next, he's speaking about prevalence of emotions over rational vision. He told that people who possessed by anger and possessed by hate, they could not think rationally. To think, to understand the world in its reality, to really be objective in your judgments, you need to have rational mind. It is impossible if you're possessed by negative emotions. He's writing, so many of us act upon our emotions and abandon rational thinking. We trample and silence those who do not think the same as us. And this is really, really important. He's stressing that we are not ready to listen. We are not ready to speak to others. We are not interested in their opinions. What we really interested in it is to promote and establish and justify our own positions and actions. We are not ready to listen what other people are talking to us, because our emotions prohibit us, impede our opportunity to think rational and think in dual or dialogue types of way. And one more issue which Gulen is really stressing in his writings, that people are less open to inspirations of common noble goals. They have self-pride, they have vanity, they concentrate on material interest, so ideas of building peace, building positive relationship is no more there. And of course, with issues of economic crisis, I didn't find anything yet in his writing about if he is addressing the whole issue of economic crisis, but I believe it will be very systemic, or probably very essential to his writing, to show that in situation of economic crisis, these negative perceptions of others will increase, because we're now in competition with them, and it's evident everywhere in the world. Just look what governments are coming now in Europe. Every single government which is elected now, it's more and more conservative than the previous one, especially toward immigrants, especially toward people of different faiths and so on. What are implications of all of this for human behavior? What happens if we think in such a way? What happens if we perceive the world in particular way? And he told that what happens that we see prevalence of differences and misperceptions in people's minds, and it really affects their actions. And such results of negative perceptions filled with hate and violent actions are bombings, murders, and some other acts which sometimes called terrorism, sometimes called self-sacrifice. But all these actions really coming from this inability to think and open heart for understanding of the world. And Gulen stressing everywhere that people are not capable of working together toward achievement of noble goal of peace. People just do not see it as a possibility for them. So why we can do it? What's the role of mankind? How Gulen states the role of mankind? He told that mankind possesses positive creative force. We are not just a part of the world. We, people who create the world, and God given people opportunity to recreate and make the world better. We are not just somebody who is following creation, ideas of creation. We're creating it ourselves. And people can bring positive change, can transform the world for good. And the world can become a better place and rest in unity in human beings. And also Gulen stressing it's also unity between human beings and also unity between the earth, the planet, and human beings. So he's speaking about different levels of it. Moreover, it's not very strongly prominent in his writing, but we still can find very interesting ideas. It's probably the most recent writings is peace building or creation of peace as a noble goal. Idea of noble goal, it's very prominent in Gulen writing, but pretty recently I found more and more connection in his thinking between peace building, developing positive relations between people as a noble goal. And what is noble goal? Is usually devotion to positive transformation of the world. If you really devote yourself for this positive transformation, it's become noble. And people should, Gulen telling that people should be selfless in putting this noble goal above their own aim and inspirations. And what is important that this noble goal is responsibility for common good. And it's very important for humanity. So how we can, what we can do in this? How we can find here, when we state the problem, when we state that humanity, human people really have ability, that God gave people opportunity to be creative, positively creative, and change the world for the better. What can we do? What can be done? And here we look for fusion of Gulen ideas and current ideas from Western societies. I just give few ideas about what can be useful. For example, in social psychology there is so-called contact theory, which telling us that the more contact with representative of other cultures we have, the easier for us to understand them, to communicate with them, to be able to understand what they are thinking about the world, how they behave. But what is also important that all current research on contact theory, which is pretty old one, it started 1954 from Allport research, but current research shows there are some very important requirements for such contact theory. You could not just bring people together, expect they will love each other and they will be in friendship. And first of all, it's important that it should be equal status of people who in contact. You could not bring people who do not have power, do not have resources, together with people who have everything, and then expect that they will build peace and understanding. Of course not. It has to be equal status between groups. It has to be also cooperative interdependence. People have to see that only cooperation can bring them into positive change. We also speak about opportunities for personal relations between group members. It's not like we bring one group and another group and put them on two sides of the table. We have to give them opportunity to have the person-to-person types of relationship. And we found I found in my own research and a lot of research in our field that sometimes, you know, small points, then people negotiate on the table, and then they have small opportunities to speak about their families, their children, I don't know, gardening, like spring now. Everything which can bring more interesting ideas of what their personal goals can be, what their personal interest can be, really change contacts a lot. Then because you can start seeing humanity in other people, not just as another party. And also we're speaking about that it's important to have supportive norms by authorities who create this contact. That you could not put people in one room, leave them and tell, okay, you now befriend. You really have to create specific norms, very structural procedure to help them to understand each other, and to help them to be more and more positive toward each other. So this is the requirements from contact theory. Another theory which will be useful for understanding of Gulen ideas is so-called realistic conflict theory, which tells that contact alone could not really help us. We need to have this cooperative interdependence, and we have to have common goals which will unite us together. There is a very interesting story. I don't have time to tell the whole story, but more than 50 years ago, two social psychologists brought together young people, usually they were boys, to the summer camp. They just randomly divide them into groups and organize competition. And after 2 days, boys started hating each other. It was Sharif experiments. They started hating each other, they were using prejudice biases, they were called names, other friends, other boys. Again, they were chosen randomly. Some of them sometimes were friends, but now it was a strong boundary between them. And then to deal with it, they introduce activities which unite boys together. For example, they pretended that a car is broken, and boys had to push this car to start it, and they had to do it together. Or they told that the movie which boys really wanted to see is too expensive, they could not buy it, so boys had to collect, raise some money to buy the movie together. And then they started introducing such positive, common experiences. They saw how relations increase immediately. And there are a lot of, I really recommend, if you are interested in this, there is a wonderful documentary that you can now see online, free of charge, called Class Divided, which speaks about very interesting experiments also around 50 years ago, when one of the teachers, very famous teachers, started introducing exercise which called brown eyes, blue eyes. I don't know if you heard about it, where students were divided by blue eyes or brown eyes, and the whole idea of discrimination, the whole ideas of biases and prejudice were introduced. One group were better, another group was worse. And it's a wonderful movie. I really recommend it, like 40 minutes movie. I really recommend you to see, to understand how easily you can introduce idea of hatred and ideas of discrimination if you put competition into play. And this is what conflict resolution, according to this theory, possible only if we have intergroup cooperation and common shared identities. And the last one, which I want to speak today, is common identity model, developed by Sam Gaertner. Most of his publications lie in like 2000, 2001, 2003. And he suggested that one of the possibilities to deal with conflict is to unite people together, unite in one common identity. Because in this situation, develop some, how we call this, overarching identity or common identity, Moreover, there were more and more research. There are different types of categorization. For example, if like we have this divide here, if one group belongs to like group A and there is another group B, these categories become so strong, so important, and people really see more and more differences. There are, I don't want to go very deeper into this, there are different processes which shape differences between groups over the time, and people begin to perceive each other negative way. One of the way how to fight with it is to do so-called decategorization, when each person will communicate with each other, which is really similar to contact theory. Another way to deal with it is to do so-called cross-cutting identities, where, for example, we'll unite all women together from both groups, all men together, or we'll unite all young people, or all people wearing green, or all people wearing black, or something. So we will develop some cross-categories, like young people from different ethnic groups, scholars, Muslim, non-Muslim scholars, what we are doing today, and so on. Well, this possibility of developing new ties, new categories across the boundary will reduce importance of boundary. There is something going on. I hope it's not a ticking bomb. So what we're also speaking about association of separate individuals, as I told, and the last one is a common identity, develop common regional identity. So why it's important, why it's speaking about some of these theories today? Because they are very relevant, and I see a lot of fusion with ideas of Gulen about dialogue. And what major ideas, I know some of you work a lot about, just do very quick overview from social psychological conflict resolution point of view, how Gulen speaking about it. He's speaking first of all that dialogue can bring mutual understanding. It can bring respect, dedication to justice. It's one of the major ideas why we need dialogue. Second very important issue, the dialogue does not require acceptance of another group way of life, beliefs, values, and this is very important, because there is some misperception that if we want to build peace, we have to accept other ways of life, we have to understand, to see, not just see, but accept how they live, how they behave, and so on. And Gulen is really telling, it's really wonderful that he's stressing that it does not require acceptance, it requires just understanding. It's offer opportunity to understand ideas and positions of others. And from this understanding, respect is coming. And we are not just accepting, we are not pushing people to accept. It's not assimilation, which was very, in the United States, for example, assimilation was very popular during 70s and 80s. And in a lot of many other countries, assimilation still pushing people to accept particular way of life, particular language, particular religion, and so on. And we also speaking, the last one, he's speaking that dialogue really contributes to human ability to come together. There is this ability, remember we discussed with you already, that there is a very important opportunity of people to change world for good. And dialogue is one of the tools which we can use for this ability, to further this ability of people to come together, forget about previous conflicts, misunderstanding, and work for noble goal. The question is, can we negotiate? How we can go to dialogue, and can we negotiate different identities? We know how identities are important. We know how identities contribute to conflict. People are ready from, unfortunately, conflict studies, we know that people are ready to kill each other just because people belong to different identity, without even knowing who this person is, without even knowing why this person, or did this person was this person involved in some conflict or not. People were ready to kill people just because they belong to particular identity or particular social category. And examples, unfortunately, striking. For example, you know, in Rwanda, people were killing each other. They were not bad people. People were going every single day for job of killing. They had breakfast with their children, and they were going, and they had a norm to kill 100 people a day, and they were going back to their family and celebrated evening. And Nazi regime, we know how many people were doing the same, but we could not tell they were evil people. It was a propaganda, manipulation of the identity which turned these people. They're also victimized, because if you become a perpetrator, you're also victimized. We could not justify them. We know that there were a lot of people who resisted, and we prize these people, we respect these people, we respect them as heroes. But those people who submitted to manipulation, those people who submitted to justification of evil actions, they were not evil in their own thinking. It's just the whole process was organized, and I write a lot about it. I have several books which go deeper. I just don't have time to do today. But there are specific processes which lead people to submission for such particular processes. And they believe that the world is all in this black and white sides, and they believe it's noble to kill others. How can it be possible to negotiate? Is it possible to do something in such situations when people are ready to kill each other, sacrifice their lives? Can dialogue be employed as a tool for reconciling identity differences? Can we do it? And answer is yes, we can. And to do it, we really need to develop this fusion again of Western theories and ideas from Gulen movement and some other movements. And there are two reasons for it. First of all, identities are not zero-sum concepts, like territory and resources. They're created. If they're created for bad, we can create them for good. And they're socially constructed. So they can be reconstructed and redefined. Of course, there are some elements of social identity which are very hard to discuss and negotiate. For example, faith, attachment to land, confidence in history, commitment to culture and religion, but we still can discuss it in dialogue. So dialogue about identities does not require acceptance of other group ways of life, as Gulen was telling us, does not provoke assimilation. It also gives opportunity to understand beliefs, ideas and positions of others. And it's also bringing common in us love of God, devotion to sacred ideas, commitment to beliefs. It can be religious beliefs or even some other beliefs if people are not religious, but there are even people believe in good and they believe in noble goal of changing the world. This is what unites us, which should be the most important approach. So what Gulen is telling us, what could be the steps in conflict resolution? As dialogue as a tool of conflict resolution. First of all, in the step number 1, we should acknowledge and recognize positive sides of humanity. People have to recognize and accept their own good nature. And this is the first step. You could not start dialogue still with hatred in your life, in your heart, with hate of others. You have to acknowledge that we are good. And Gulen really very profoundly stressing it everywhere. We have to understand that we are people who devoted to love. For example, he's writing, I can and I do say that peace, love and forgiveness and tolerance are fundamental to Islam and to human life. And this is very important. We're speaking about, we really have to change perception of people as we are in conflict, in the idea that we are peaceful people. We have to develop this value of tolerance, open-mindedness, and it's not so easy. Then I was doing research in Northern Ireland. I was asking people who live near the peace wall and every day throwing stones or bottles around the peace wall in hopes that they will kill somebody on the other side. And then you see another part of Ireland, wonderful Northern Ireland. There is no hate, people live together in communities. And then you ask, why are you living here? And you know, I was shocked by the answer. People told me, because it's who we are. It's because if we will leave, we will not fight, it will be not us anymore. We have to fight because it's who we are, it's part of our life. And this is very important to change, and Gulen providing wonderful writings and ideas how to promote this piece of love and peace as a self-perception. We have start with our self-perception. And he's speaking that we really have developed this peaceful self-concept. I'm changing it a little bit for social psychology, speaking about love. I'm stressing that we're speaking about peaceful self-concept and positive perceptions of others. Second step in dialogue is acknowledgement of common values, needs and goals, and acceptance of these common needs and goals. We have to respect religion. We have to satisfy values of all religious groups, and again, sometimes it could be people who just united by the noble goal. It could be religion, or it can be noble goal of positive change in the world. And for example, Gulen telling for interfaith dialogue to succeed, we must forget the past, ignore polemics, focus on common points. And you remember we discussed with you this theory of common identity, where it's really idea of Gulen and social psychology come into play when two succeed in dialogue. After developing this positive perception of ourselves, we should think about commonality, what unites us, what makes us opportunity to be together. And step number 3, then we develop this common overarching identity, which establishes foundation for common actions toward a noble goal of peace. If we develop this overarching identity, it will be much easier for us, because there will be no this divide between groups anymore. And it gives us opportunity to discuss different aspects of common goal, of positive change. We can speak about, and it could be different opportunities, could be geographic location, just we geographically together. It could be common national ideas. It can be shared community problems. We did a lot of work in Crimea, for example, to unite. I did a lot of trainings for religious leaders from different faiths to come together, and instead of promoting negativity in relations, to come together and address local issues of absence of water, bad school or something. So then religious leaders become real agents of change in their community together. So what dialogue given us? Moving from past opposition to mutual understanding, responsibilities and acceptance of common goal. And it's also given us opportunity to unite this concept of peaceful we with devotion to mutual goal of peace, what Gulen is stressing. And to end, I want to use one of my favorite phrase, and actually it's really standard to conclude, as results one of his articles. To conclude, good intentions, positive thinking, and perceiving the beautiful are signs of person's purity of heart and the immensity of their conscience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karina. If I may,
thank you.
Start with the first question, and then we'll take it to the audience. And for the record, the Rumi Forum is an institution inspired by Gulen's ideas, and from various other academics we've been told that the Gulen movement is active in 100 or so countries around the world through dialogue centers, schools, etc. Is the Gulen movement unique on a global scale, and if so, what makes it unique?
This is a very interesting question, because we can speak that it's unique in its own, because Gulen really promotes his idea, and he is one person standing, and he has his own ideas. But it's also not unique, because there are a lot of other people working for the same goal of peace. And this is great, because positive changes can be brought from different sides. The most important, again, here is not to speak about uniqueness or not uniqueness, but speaking how we can unite our goals together. And unfortunately, I know that there are a lot of Gulen movements in places where other people who are doing a lot of peace building work are not really collaborating. And this is a major issue, honestly, in conflict resolution and peace building. I did research on UN missions and differences between humanitarian approach and social justice approach, and we found that people are not just do not want to know what other people are doing, but they compete because they have different goals. And this is a major issue. I do believe that what Gulen movement should do more is to promote itself as a peace-building activity, which brings together other groups which are doing a lot of work in these countries.
Thank you.